Hello again folks, and I hope you're all still keeping well out there too. Back out at the feral pigeons again, at the same farmyard as the last time. Now this was filmed back in August, as I have a backlog of stuff to edit, so don't be surprised if you're seeing green trees and hearing birdsong in my videos all the way to this side of Christmas. But anyway, back to the hunt. And you can see I'm only in the shed door, and I've spotted a few birds up in the rafters already. But they're already very jumpy, and don't sit around very long. Though I did spot one the other side of the combine that did seem to be a bit more settled. The shot looked good, and the bird hit the ground with a good thud. You've probably already picked it up in the title, but yep, I brought the Springer with me today, the Weirich HW97 N177 caliber, and I'm using RWS Superfield pellets. As I rounded the end of the combine, which didn't get used this year as he couldn't get a part for it, I spotted a pigeon up in the gap in the tin. I got onto it with the rifle, but the glare coming from the outside, I couldn't see it quite right, and it didn't stay around long enough to get a shot either. Which brought me into my next head scratcher. Where was the bird I just shot? I know it dropped here because I heard it hit the ground, but there was no sign of it, and there's nothing much about here for it to hide behind either. Until I looked out the hole in the wall. Yep, somehow I'd only nicked the poor critter, and he was making his escape through the weeds outside, where thankfully I was able to get a follow-up shot on him, which initially he seemed to shrug off quite easily, but by the time I had the rifle recocked and loaded, he was finished. Well, that was the first one in the bag, but to be honest, I should have had at least another one, maybe two, if I'd have been a bit quicker on the trigger. Now for that blasted door that kept banging in the background. There was no way to latch it from the inside, so I wedged a piece of timber in below it and a brick to keep it still. Now to what proved to be the honey spot the last time I was here. This side door leads to a big shed that had calves in it last year, and even though there's nothing in it at the minute, it proved quite popular with the pigeons the last time I was here. And sure enough, it wasn't going to disappoint, as there was quite a few birds already sitting on the rafters. This is where a multi-shot PCP would really have come in handy. Initially, I'd only really seen 3 or 4 birds, but every time I took a shot, it seemed to disturb other birds in a neighbouring shed out of sight, which would fly round and land on the rafters or the wall in front of me, giving me another opportunity. The scope I'm using is an MTC Mamba Lite 3-12x44. And I have a Tacticam 5.0 and FTS unit fitted to it for the scope cam footage. Looks like this one needs a follow-up shot. Yes, it goes bang a lot easier without the safety catch. The flurry continued for a few minutes, with birds coming and going, until I spotted the last one at about 40 yards away. It's a little further than what I would usually shoot with the Springer, but since it was giving me such a clean target, I couldn't refuse it. Once I remembered to take the safety catch off again, that is. It was a hard hit, as you can see by the feathers, but it still managed to fly into the neighbouring barn, where I thought I would find it later. I tried to quietly make my way up through the shed, watching the rafters in the opposite shed in case there was any more pigeons, as there was the last time, but unfortunately no, they'd all cleared off by now. So I picked the birds up I had shot and made my way back to the first shed. The shed still hasn't been cleaned out since the calves were in it, so you can see how much the bird dung has gathered up over the year. Though I have found out since, it isn't just feral pigeon dung, there's actually quite a lot of starlings roost in this shed at night as well. With that little lot gathered up, I decided to walk round to the neighbouring shed and search for that 40-yard pigeon I'd hit, only to find it lying dead in the yard, curled up at the bottom of the gate. It must have flew through both sheds, out through a gap above the door, only to drop dead across the yard. I'd say I hit it a little far back, but even so, it flew quite a distance before it finally dropped. Since I'd spooked a few birds entering the first shed, I decided it'd be a good place to sit and wait for them to see if they'd come back. Which one or two did, but even though I thought I was well enough hid behind this plough, as soon as I would move to try and get a shot at them, they'd spot me and fly straight back out again. Feral pigeons they may be, but they were certainly no bird brain. Every now and again I'd carefully check back on the calf house to see if any other birds had returned. But even they were proving to be a lot more jumpy now. So I decided to change tactics and headed round to the big neighbouring shed, which was now full of straw bales that I should be able to hide behind. And, sure enough, a bird did come in after a while and landed up in the wall about 10-15 yards away from me. Oh, that was a tight squeeze. Well, at least that one didn't fly anywhere further, but it was the only one that came into the shed. The evening was starting to draw in by now, and even though it was still light outside, it was getting more and more difficult to see the pigeons on the beams and ledges that they like to sit on in the shed. And before you type anything, we're not allowed to use night vision or lamps to shoot pest birds in Northern Ireland. I thought I might have actually missed the bird in the dark gloomy conditions, as it flew to another beam about 50-60 yards away at the end of the shed. So I reloaded the rifle and nipped into the shed, hoping to get close enough for a second shot, only to hear a bird high on the wall beside me as I got in the door. It was another dark gloomy shot, but the bird dropped stone dead to the ground with a solid thud. Even with the disturbance, the other bird that flew to the far end of the shed was still there, so maybe I didn't miss him with the first shot. Either way, I managed to get within 30 yards of it, then leaned up against the wall to help steady my aim. I kept the camera on it, expecting it to roll off the beam at any second, but it was that well tucked up in there, it gave one last lurch and died there and then up on the beam. You'd need a Labrador with a jetpack to fetch that one. I usually don't have much use for feral pigeons, as I don't eat them, not when you see the sort of places they live in. But the farmer asked me if I could drop them down to his place afterwards, because he could use them to feed the cats, so that's where this lot went. Well folks, I hope you enjoyed that, and seeing the HW97 out again, and I have more footage with it, decoying wood pigeons one evening. That I have to edit yet. But until then, take care and look after yourselves, hey.